The massive alien ship descended from the clouds above New York City on a warm June morning in 2157. Its sleek, pearl-white surface reflected the sunlight like polished chrome. People stopped in the streets, their phones pointed skyward as history unfolded before their eyes. Inside the United Nations headquarters, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the window, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. At 45 years old, she had prepared for many diplomatic scenarios, but first contact with an alien civilization wasn't one of them. The ship, nearly a kilometer long, came to rest above the East River, hovering silently like a metallic whale. "They're ready for us, Ambassador," her assistant whispered from the doorway. Sarah nodded, smoothing down her dark blue suit before following him to the General Assembly Hall. The room was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth. The air felt thick with tension and excitement. Sarah took her place at the main podium as Earth's chosen spokesperson. Minutes later, the main doors opened. 3 alien figures entered the hall. They walked on 2 legs, but that's where their similarity to humans ended. Their bodies were tall and slender, with iridescent scales covering their skin. Each had 4 arms and elongated heads with large dark eyes. They wore flowing robes embedded with lights that pulsed in rhythm with their movements. The leader of the group, who introduced himself as High Counselor Vreen of the Galactic Council, spoke in perfect English through a small device at his throat. "People of Earth, we welcome you to the greater galactic community." The formal introductions went smoothly until they reached the subject of Earth's military capabilities. As part of the standard joining process, each new species had to demonstrate their defense technologies. General Marcus Rodriguez, Earth's military representative, stood proudly as he presented holographic displays of Earth's most advanced weapons. Tanks, fighter jets, aircraft carriers, and various firearms appeared in 3D above the assembly floor. The aliens' reaction was unexpected. High Counselor Vreen made a sound that his translator conveyed as laughter. The other 2 council members joined in, their scaled bodies shimmering with amusement. "You still use projectile weapons?" Vreen asked, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "Physical bullets. Explosive powder." He turned to his companions, speaking in their native tongue, which caused more laughter. Sarah felt her cheeks warm, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. General Rodriguez's jaw tightened, but he too remained professional. "Perhaps," Vreen continued, his voice carrying a hint of condescension, "you would benefit from seeing real weapons." He raised one of his 4 arms, and a hologram appeared, showing sleek ships firing beams of pure energy. "These are standard Council defense systems. Energy weapons, powered by zero-point field generators. No primitive gunpowder or physical projectiles needed." Sarah watched as the general's hands curled into fists at his sides. She knew humanity's pride was being wounded, but this was too important to let emotions take over. "We appreciate the demonstration, High Counselor," Sarah said smoothly. "Earth looks forward to learning from the Council's advanced technology. However, we have found our current weapons systems to be quite effective for our needs." Vreen made another sound, this time like a snort. Of course. All new species need time to advance." He waved one of his hands dismissively. "We will begin the integration process tomorrow. Your world has much to learn." As the aliens left the assembly hall, Sarah caught General Rodriguez's eye. They shared a look that spoke volumes. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, but no one had expected to be laughed at. Later that evening, in her office overlooking the illuminated alien ship, Sarah typed in her official report. She paused, looking at the final line she had written. "The Galactic Council may view us as primitive, but perhaps they should remember that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones." She didn't know then how prophetic those words would prove to be. The next morning, the Galactic Council representatives led Earth's delegation through their ship. The interior was a marvel of technology, with corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked. High Counselor Vreen walked ahead, his scaled body reflecting the soft blue light from above. Sarah Chen and General Rodriguez followed closely behind, along with a small group of Earth's top scientists and military experts. Dr. Emily Wong, Earth's leading weapons researcher, kept touching the walls in fascination, her scanner beeping quietly. "And this," Vreen announced, stopping at a large circular room, "is our weapons demonstration chamber." He waved one of his 4 arms, and the room came alive with holographic displays. "Pay attention, primitives. This is what real defensive technology looks like." The air shimmered as energy weapons materialized around them. Sleek, almost artistic devices that looked nothing like Earth's bulky guns and rifles. Vreen picked up one of the weapons, its surface glowing with a soft purple light. "Observe," he said, pointing at a target at the far end of the room. A beam of pure energy shot forth, leaving no smoke, no sound, just a perfect hole through the center of the target. Clean, efficient, civilized. Dr. Wong raised her hand. "What powers these weapons?" "Zero-point energy," Vreen replied, his voice dripping with superiority. "Most species discover this technology shortly after achieving spaceflight. Though some," he glanced meaningfully at the humans, "take longer than others." General Rodriguez stepped forward. "And these energy weapons, they're effective against all threats." "Of course," Vreen said, "all civilized species use energy-based technology. Only primitive worlds cling to explosive powders and metal projectiles." He set down the weapon and turned to face the humans directly. "Which brings us to the warning." The room's lighting dimmed slightly. Vreen's expression became serious, his large eyes reflecting the holographic displays around them. "The galaxy is not always a peaceful place," he continued. "There are threats that your primitive weapons could never hope to handle. This is why we're offering to help upgrade your defensive capabilities." New holograms appeared, showing various alien worlds. Each had massive cities with architecture that made Earth's tallest skyscrapers look like toys. "These are some of our member worlds, all protected by our superior technology." Sarah noticed something interesting. While Vreen spoke, one of his junior council members, Zixtel, kept glancing at Earth's weapons with an expression that seemed more curious than dismissive. She filed that observation away for later. "We're detecting increasing hostile activity in your sector of space," Vreen explained. "For your own safety, you should abandon your primitive weapons and adopt our superior technology as quickly as possible." General Rodriguez spoke up again. "And if we choose to maintain our current defense systems alongside your technology." Vreen made that laughing sound again. "Why would you keep obsolete technology? Would you fight a space battle with bows and arrows?" His scales rippled with amusement. "No, you will learn. All species do, eventually." As they left the demonstration chamber, Dr. Wong fell into step beside Sarah. "Ambassador," she whispered, "did you notice they never actually showed us their defensive shields in action? Only offensive weapons." Sarah nodded slightly. She had noticed many things during this demonstration. The Council's confidence bordered on arrogance. Their dismissal of Earth's technology seemed almost rehearsed, as if they'd done this many times before. Back in her temporary quarters aboard the alien ship, Sarah wrote in her personal log, "They laugh at our weapons, but I can't shake the feeling they're missing something important. Humanity didn't survive this long by being stupid. Sometimes the old ways persist for good reasons." In his own quarters, General Rodriguez was making encrypted calls to Earth. All military development projects were to continue as planned, regardless of the Council's opinions. Something in his gut told him that humanity might need those primitive weapons sooner than anyone expected. 3 months after Earth's first contact, chaos erupted in the Galactic Council. Sarah Chen sat in an emergency meeting aboard the Council's massive space station, watching the holographic displays with growing concern. The images showed destruction on a scale she had never imagined possible. "Another colony has gone dark," announced Zixtel, his scales now a pale gray color that humans had learned indicated distress. "Vega Prime is not responding to any communications." High Counselor Vreen's usual confidence had vanished. The attack footage played again. Strange, shadow-like ships appearing near Vega Prime, their surface seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Council's energy weapons fired brilliant beams at the invaders, but something unexpected happened. The energy weapons, Dr. Wong whispered to Sarah. They're passing right through those ships. General Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowed as he studied the footage. The Council's supposedly superior weapons were completely ineffective. The enemy ships had some kind of technology that simply ignored energy-based attacks. How many worlds have we lost? Someone asked. 3 in the past week, Vreen replied, his voice shaking. Our shields fail, our weapons do nothing, and we lose all contact within hours. Sarah noticed something interesting in the footage. Can you replay the last attack sequence? She requested. The hologram rewound, showing the moment just before Vega Prime's defenses failed. There, she pointed. What's that? The image zoomed in on a small trading vessel that had been caught in the battle. It had fired some sort of mining charges at the shadow ships. Simple, physical explosives. While they hadn't done much damage, the explosives had definitely connected with the enemy vessels. General Rodriguez and Dr. Wong exchanged meaningful looks. The council members were too panicked to notice this small detail, but the humans had seen it clearly. Physical projectiles could hit these mysterious ships. Back in the Earth delegation's private chambers, an urgent meeting took place. Their energy weapons are useless, Rodriguez stated flatly, but our primitive bullets might actually work. Dr. Wong nodded excitedly. The enemy ships seem to have some kind of energy dispersal field. It makes sense. They developed it to counter the Council's technology. But they might not be prepared for good old-fashioned kinetic weapons. Sarah thought carefully before speaking. The Council's pride won't let them ask for our help easily. They still think we're primitive. Then we'll let them figure it out themselves, Rodriguez suggested. Zixtal has been asking questions about our weapons. He's less arrogant than the others. As if on cue, there was a soft chime at their door. Zixtal entered, looking nervous, or as nervous as his alien features could express. Ambassadors, he said quietly, I've been studying your world's military history. He paused, his scales shifting color slightly. Your species, you've never stopped developing projectile weapons, even after discovering more advanced technology. Why? Sarah smiled gently. Because on Earth, we believe in keeping our options open. New doesn't always mean better. The shadow ships, Zixtal continued, they ignore our energy weapons completely. But that trading vessel's mining charges, he left the thought unfinished. Yes, General Rodriguez confirmed. We noticed that too. Zixtal's scales rippled with emotion. The Council would never officially ask, but would Earth be willing to share its expertise in physical weapon systems? Before anyone could answer, another emergency alert blared through the station. A fourth world had gone dark. The shadow ships were getting closer. Sarah looked at her fellow humans, then back at Zixtal. Tell the Council that Earth is ready to help. But they need to understand. This time, they'll have to learn from us. As Zixtal hurried away, Dr. Wong turned to Sarah. They laughed at our guns, she said softly. Yes, Sarah replied, watching the alert screens fill with more distress signals. But I don't think they'll be laughing much longer. The council chamber fell silent as they watched their greatest military stronghold, Centauri Base, crumble under attack. The massive space station, protected by the most advanced energy shields in the galaxy, lasted barely an hour against the shadow ships. High Counselor Vreen's scales had turned almost white with fear. Impossible, he whispered, watching the massive energy cannons fire uselessly through the enemy vessels. Our best weapons, our strongest shields. Sarah Chen stood quietly in the corner with General Rodriguez and Dr. Wong. They had been invited to the emergency session, but hadn't spoken yet. They didn't need to. The footage spoke for itself. Play the last transmission again, Zixtal requested, his voice shaking. The hologram showed Centauri Base's final moments. The shadow ships phased right through the energy shields, ignoring them completely. Energy weapons passed harmlessly through their dark hulls. But then something unexpected happened. A cargo ship, trying to escape, accidentally rammed one of the shadow vessels. The enemy ship actually moved. Physical contact had affected it. Vreen's head snapped up, his large eyes fixing on the human delegation. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The mighty Galactic Council, masters of energy weapons and advanced technology, had finally realized what the humans had known for weeks. Ambassador Chen, Vreen said slowly, his voice heavy with defeated pride. Perhaps we were too quick to dismiss Earth's military technology. Sarah stepped forward, her face professional and composed. The Council's weapons are highly advanced, she said diplomatically. But sometimes older methods have unexpected advantages. Explain, demanded another council member. General Rodriguez moved to the central display, pulling up schematics of basic human weapons. Your energy weapons are passing through these ships because they're designed to disperse energy attacks. But physical projectiles, bullets, missiles, even simple kinetic impacts, those still affect them. Dr. Wong added, it's like trying to fight a ghost with a flashlight versus throwing a rock at it. The light passes through, but the rock still hits. The council members looked at each other, their scales shifting through various colors of distress and embarrassment. Decades of technological superiority had left them vulnerable to exactly the kind of weapons they had mocked. How quickly can Earth provide assistance? Vreen asked, swallowing his pride completely. Sarah glanced at General Rodriguez, who nodded. We've been preparing since we first noticed the weakness, she replied. Earth's factories have been working at full capacity. We can begin arming council ships with kinetic weapons within days. But, Rodriguez added firmly, your crews will need training. These weapons require different tactics, different thinking. You can't just point and shoot like with energy weapons. Vreen stood, his tall frame seeming somehow smaller than before. The Galactic Council formally requests Earth's help in defending against this threat. He paused, his scales rippling with emotion. We acknowledge our error in dismissing your military expertise. Sarah stepped forward, extending her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Earth stands ready to help. But understand this, we work together as equals. No more talk of primitive weapons or superior technology, just soldiers fighting side by side. Vreen reached out with one of his 4 hands, awkwardly shaking Sarah's. Agreed, he said quietly. As the emergency session ended, Sarah overheard 2 council members talking. To think, one said, we laughed at their weapons. Yes, replied the other, watching human military advisors already beginning to work with council tactical teams. And now those same weapons might save us all. Back in their quarters, Dr. Wong was already modifying council ship designs to accommodate human weapon systems. You know, she said to Sarah, it's ironic. They spent centuries advancing beyond projectile weapons, only to find out that sometimes the old ways are the best ways, Sarah finished. Let's just hope we can get their forces trained in time. The shadow ships won't wait for us to be ready. General Rodriguez looked up from his tactical displays. They'll learn, he said confidently. They have to. Their survival depends on it now. The massive view screen showed hundreds of shadow ships approaching Proxima Station, the Council's last major stronghold in the sector. But this time, things were different. This time, they were ready. Captain Maria Santos of the Earth destroyer Thunderchild stood on her bridge, watching the enemy approach. Her ship, like dozens of others, had been retrofitted with both Council and Earth technology. The crew was mixed, humans working alongside Council species, each bringing their own expertise to the battle. All stations report ready, her alien first officer, Kexley, announced. His scales showed the blue-green color of focused determination. Shadow ships entering weapons range in 5 minutes, reported the sensor officer. In the station's command center, Sarah Chen, and High Counselor Vreen watched the tactical display together. The past month had been spent preparing for this moment. Council ships now bristled with railguns and missile launchers alongside their energy weapons. Human military advisors had trained alien crews in the art of ballistic combat. "Remember your training." General Rodriguez's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "Don't try to hit them with energy weapons. Use the kinetic weapons we installed. Make every shot count." The shadow ships approached with their usual confidence, probably expecting another easy victory. They didn't realize this battle would be different. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Alpha," Santos ordered. "Thunderchild, taking point." The human-modified ships moved into position. The shadow ships passed through the outer energy shields just as they had done before. But this time, instead of useless energy beams, they were met with a wall of tungsten slugs accelerated to relativistic speeds. The effect was immediate and devastating. The first shadow ship took a direct hit from Thunderchild's main railgun. Instead of passing through harmlessly, the hypersonic projectile tore straight through its hull. The enemy vessel shuddered, its light-absorbing surface flickering. "Direct hit," Kexley shouted, his scales now pulsing with excitement. "Their hull is breached." Sarah watched as more council ships opened fire with their new weapons. Missiles streaked across space, their conventional warheads proving just as effective as the railguns. The shadow ships, for the first time, seemed confused. Their energy-dispersing technology was useless against simple physical projectiles. "Second wave, engage," Rodriguez commanded. More ships moved forward, unleashing a barrage of kinetic weapons. The shadow ships tried to adjust their tactics, but centuries of fighting only energy weapons had left them unprepared for this type of combat. On Thunderchild's bridge, Captain Santos allowed herself a small smile as another shadow ship exploded under sustained railgun fire. "They never expected this," she said to Kexley. "They thought the whole galaxy would fight like the Council." "Human weapons," Kexley replied, watching another successful hit, so simple, yet so effective. "We were fools to laugh at them." The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was already clear. The shadow ships, facing weapons they couldn't counter, began to retreat. Their previously unstoppable advance had finally been checked. In the command center, Vreen turned to Sarah, his scales showing colors she had never seen before. "Your people," he said quietly. "You've saved us all with weapons we mocked as primitive." Sarah watched the enemy fleet retreat on the tactical display. "Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones," she replied. "The galaxy forgot about kinetic weapons, but Earth remembered. We never stopped improving them, never stopped thinking about different ways to fight." As the last shadow ships disappeared into deep space, celebrations broke out across the fleet. Human and alien crews celebrated together, their previous prejudices forgotten in the joy of victory. On Thunderchild's bridge, Captain Santos opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is just the beginning," she announced. "We've proven they can be hurt. We've proven they can be beaten. Now, we take the fight to them." The cheers that answered her came in many voices, human and alien alike. The galaxy was changing. The age of energy weapons supremacy was over. A new era of combined arms warfare had begun, and humanity was leading the way. The combined fleet of Earth and Council vessels hung in space above New Terra, humanity's first colony world. Intelligence suggested this would be where the shadow ships would make their final stand. After months of defeats, the enemy had gathered their remaining forces for one massive attack. General Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the massive carrier, humanity's pride, now the flagship of the combined fleet. Around him, humans and aliens worked together with practiced efficiency. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have seemed impossible. "Enemy fleet detected," announced the sensor officer, a council member named Thrax. "Largest concentration we've ever seen. At least 3,000 shadow ships." Sarah Chen, now serving as the fleet's diplomatic officer, exchanged glances with High Counselor Vreen. Their own fleet numbered just over 2,000 ships, each retrofitted with both human and council technology. All ships, battle stations, Rodriguez ordered. His voice carried across the entire fleet. Remember your training. Remember Proxima Station. We beat them before. We'll beat them again. Captain Santos's voice came over the comm from Thunderchild. Sir, Task Force Alpha is in position. All railguns charged and ready. The shadow ships emerged from hyperspace like a dark wave, their light-absorbing hulls making them look like holes in space itself. But this time, no one in the fleet felt fear. They were ready. Execute Battle Plan Omega, Rodriguez commanded. Show them what humanity and the Council can do together. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. The shadow ships charged forward, expecting their energy-dispersing technology to protect them. Instead, they met a carefully coordinated defense that combined the best of both civilizations. Council energy weapons, while useless against the shadow ships directly, created a web of crossfire that restricted their movement. Into these killing zones, human-designed railguns and missile batteries poured devastating kinetic fire. Shadow ships exploded by the dozens, then hundreds. They're trying to break through Sector 7. Vreen called out, his scales flashing with tactical colors. Thunderchild, take your group and reinforce that sector, Rodriguez ordered. Fire pattern Delta. On her ship, Captain Santos grinned. You heard the general. All guns, maximum fire rate. Show them why humanity never gave up on kinetic weapons. Thunderchild's massive railguns roared silently in space, launching tungsten rounds at near-relativistic speeds. The shadow ship's advanced technology meant nothing against basic physics. More enemy ships shattered under the assault. The battle raged for hours. Both sides took losses, but the combined fleet held their ground. The shadow ships, for the first time, seemed to be losing their coordination. Enemy fleet showing signs of disarray. Thrax reported excitedly. Their formation is breaking down. Sarah watched the tactical display intently. They've never faced a defeat like this. They don't know how to handle it. All ships, Rodriguez's voice boomed across the fleet. This is the moment. Push forward. Drive them back. The combined fleet surged forward as one. Council ships provided covering fire with their energy weapons, while Earth vessels pounded the enemy with kinetic weapons. The shadow ships, their seemingly invincible technology now useless, began to retreat. They're running, Santos called out. The bridge crew of Thunderchild, human and alien alike, cheered together. As the last shadow ships flowed into hyperspace, the celebration began. Ships from both civilizations fired their energy weapons in victory salutes. The threat that had seemed unstoppable was finally broken. In the aftermath, Rodriguez turned to Vreen. Not bad for primitive weapons, wouldn't you say? Vreen's scales showed colors of happiness and humility. I will never again make the mistake of calling human technology primitive. Your people have taught us a valuable lesson. Sarah smiled, watching human and alien crews celebrating together across the fleet. Perhaps the greatest lesson, she said, is that we're stronger together. Your advanced technology and our primitive weapons working as one. The victory at New Terra would be remembered as the beginning of a new age in galactic history, an age where no civilization's contribution would be dismissed as primitive, where old and new technologies would be valued equally. And it all started because the Council laughed at human guns. 1 year after the Battle of New Terra, the Galactic Council's Great Chamber looked very different. Where once only energy weapons had decorated its walls, now human rifles and Council plasma guns hung side by side. A symbol of the new era of cooperation that had emerged from the Shadow Ship War. Sarah Chen, recently appointed as Earth's permanent representative to the Council, stood at the main podium. The chamber was packed with representatives from every spacefaring race in the galaxy. Today marked the official integration of Earth's military knowledge into the Council's defense protocols. Let history record, High Counselor Vreen announced, his scales gleaming with ceremonial colors, that on this day, The Galactic Council formally recognizes Earth as a leading authority on military defense technology. General Rodriguez, standing beside Sarah, couldn't help but smile. He remembered the day, just 18 months ago, when these same council members had laughed at human weapons. Now, those primitive weapons had saved the galaxy. Dr. Wong stepped forward, activating a holographic display. The new Combined Arms Doctrine, she explained, integrates both kinetic and energy-based weapon systems. Every council ship will now carry both. The display showed the new standard design for galactic warships. Railguns and missile launchers sat alongside energy cannons. Human targeting computers worked in harmony with council sensor systems. But more important than the technology, Sarah added, is the lesson we've all learned. Progress doesn't always mean abandoning the old ways. Sometimes, the past holds wisdom we cannot afford to forget. Captain Santos, now Admiral Santos, stood up from her seat. Thunderchild's victory at New Terra had made her a legend among both humans and aliens. The shadow ships taught us all something valuable, she said. They proved that relying too heavily on any single type of technology is dangerous. Diversity isn't just about species or cultures. It's about maintaining different ways of solving problems. Zixtel, who had been the first council member to see the value in human weapons, nodded in agreement. His scales showed the deep blue of wisdom. We had become arrogant, he admitted. We thought newer always meant better. Earth showed us that true advancement means keeping what works while embracing new ideas. The ceremony continued with the unveiling of a new training program. Young officers from every species would now learn both human and council combat techniques. The first class of cadets stood proudly at attention, their uniforms combining elements from both Earth and council designs. To think, Vreen said quietly to Sarah, we once dismissed your people as primitive. Now our finest young officers compete for spots in Earth's military academies. Sarah watched as General Rodriguez demonstrated proper rifle handling to a group of alien cadets. The galaxy is stronger for our differences, she replied. Humanity never forgot the basics because we knew that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. A month later, Sarah stood in her office in the council tower, looking out at the combined fleet conducting exercises. Council ships practicing missile launches while Earth vessels tested new energy weapons. The shadow ships had been driven back to the edges of known space, but everyone knew the importance of staying prepared. On her desk sat two items: a simple brass bullet casing from Thunderchild's first victory, and a ceremonial council energy weapon. Together, they represented everything that had been achieved. A reminder that progress didn't mean forgetting the past. Ambassador Chen, her assistant, called from the door. The new defense committee is ready to begin. Sarah nodded, picking up both items before heading to the meeting. In the chamber, humans and aliens sat together, planning the galaxy's defense. No one talked about primitive weapons anymore. No one laughed at different approaches. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The future would be built not on the abandonment of the past, but on the wisdom to value both old and new. And it all started because the council had laughed at human guns. The end.